director of the Brazil Institute here at the center. And it's a great honor, pleasure to have Décio Oddone from the ANP, the Agência Nacional de Petróleo, Gás Natural and Biocombustíveis, with us to present on what has been finally good news in the sector with the auctions that took place last month on the pre-salt auctions. I would like to ask the chair of our advisory board, Ambassador Tony Harrington, to start us off by introducing our honored guest. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Paolo, and welcome everyone to another Brazil Institute window on changes of importance underway in our key neighbor to the south. We're pleased to have Décio Oddone, the Director General of Brazil's National Petroleum, Gas, and Biofuels Agency, known as ANP. As we'll doubtless hear more, on October 27, as you know, ANP conducted two very successful bid rounds for blocks in the offshore pre-salt fields. A dozen major international oil and gas companies participated, prominently represented by some distinguished fellows here today. And the two rounds raised almost $2 billion in signing bonuses for the government at a time when the public coffers could use some replenishment. It was significant, the international interest shown, as well as in a separate bidding round in September. It's a testament to the efforts of ANP under its Director General and other arms of the Brazilian government to manage the sector in a more open, competitive, and market-oriented model. Over the past year and ongoing, the Brazilian government has implemented a number of important reforms aimed at making the sector more attractive to investors. A fundamental component was the repeal of the provision for Petrobras to be the sole operator of all the pre-salt fields. I observed this impediment up close back when the regime came into place, working with a top energy company which would most certainly have invested in Brazil petroleum development at that time, and as the Director General has noted, would have been, along with others, providing the benefits to Brazil and the public. Other recent reforms underway include the multi-year calendar for bidding, more flexible local content policies, long-term extension of the Petro customs regime, and in regard to the changes, I'd also like to note the important role being played by our mutual friend Pedro Parente, as CEO of Petrobras. Took on a very tough job and has brought order, integrity, and business sense to the company. I knew Pedro as a person of great talent when I was ambassador, and we were pleased to have him here exactly 1 year ago. This is kind of an anniversary. We're talking oil and gas.
November 16, 2016. That's correct.
Yeah.
Exactly when it is.
It was all thought,
I got
planned that way.
Décio Oddone is uniquely well positioned to discuss the changes and their economic significance. He began his career at Petrobras in the 1980s and worked his way up to the executive suite with deep experience in running international operations for the company, as well as experience in the deepwater wells. And prior to accepting the directorship of ANP, he was Director of Oil and Gas Projects at Promo Logistica. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity, you probably have, to visit one of these oil and gas platforms. I did when I was there. I thought we were going to cross the ocean in a helicopter, but finally landed on a platform, and it was very interesting. It's kind of like a small town combined with an engineering marvel. So it's happy days again on this front, hopefully in Brazil. Decio, we look forward to learning more from you and having a little time for discussion with those who've joined us.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for the introduction. My dear friend Paulo, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here in the Institute, especially exactly 1 year after Pedro Parentes increased my responsibility here with you. But glad as well to realize that this 1 year between the day that Pedro was here and today, I can say that we have progressed in Brazil a little bit towards a more open and diverse environment in oil and gas sector. As the ambassador mentioned, we had 3 bidding rounds, one for the concession regime in September 27, and then we separate 2 different bidding rounds for the pre-salt region in October 27. So that's the first opportunity I have to discuss these bidding rounds publicly. And also the first time we talk about the future plans after the bidding round. So I need some help from the slides in order to be more accurate in my words. So if you don't mind, I will use a PowerPoint presentation to follow our discussion. Please feel free to interrupt, to ask, and to discuss. This is an open section. I don't intend to let you wait for the end in order to make questions. Please feel free to interrupt. Oh, this is disclaimers from our lawyers. And the important thing is that every number and estimate we present here is exactly that, an estimate. We do not guarantee the accuracy of those estimates.
We have a lawyer at the agency, huh?
7. And they are independent. They do not depend on our same executive branch. They are in the different sector of the government. That's very good. So I have no power over our lawyers.
Okay.
It facilitates my life sitting on this problem with the lawyer. Well, we'll talk a little bit about the oil and gas scenario in Brazil, the environments that we have for exploration and production, the improvements that we did, the bidding rounds, and some very short final remarks. The oil and gas industry is relevant in Brazil. We are the 10th largest oil producer in the world, and the largest in Latin America since last year. And I was very glad to see when BP announced the energy review, putting us Brazil as the largest producer in Latin America. Unfortunately, I would say much more because the lack of investments in other countries in the region than because of our well-doings. But we are trying to correct that, and Brazil has a potential to increase production significantly in the next few years. And those numbers that we see in the slide, and these slides are public. If anyone is interested, we can give copies. But they are not even scratching our potential in terms of oil and gas production. Brazil is very large. We are in a moment, understand that everybody here is familiar with the industry, but we are in a transition for a low-carbon economy. We do not discuss any longer about the peak oil peak production. We discuss about peak demand, and we haven't even understood correctly what is the potential for oil and gas exploration in Brazil. We have mainly three different exploratory frontiers in Brazil. The pre-salt, it's extraordinary. It's home of the largest developments in exploration in the last decade. We have the convention offshore. In the pre-salt, we have wells producing up to 40,000 barrels a day, average close to 30,000 barrels a day. Then we have the conventional offshore in Brazil, the East Margin, the Equatorial Margin. Some of the companies present here in this moment, they have acreage in Brazil in this place. And we have the onshore mature basins. So we have to treat all these different regions in terms of tax regime and regulation in a different way. Our production is around 3.3 million barrels a day of oil equivalent, oil and gas. But if we look, the pre-salt is already responsible for half of our production, and this is growing very fast since 2014 especially. If we were not for the pre-salt production in Brazil will be decreasing sharply. We have seen a decrease of 30% in conventional offshore and on the onshore basins.
So it's interesting, you're now at the level where Venezuela and Mexico were before their production declined.
Yes, approximately, yeah. And we see in black the production in the pre-salt growing very sharply in the last few years, and we have a strong decline in the conventional offshore, and we see a decline, but production is very, very small, 130,000 barrels a day on the onshore as well. So in terms of reserves, pre-salt represents today 50% of our reserves, equivalent in oil is almost 13 billion barrels, but it does not represent our real potential. Thank you. As an example, we have dozens of billions of barrels of potential resource yet to be converted into reserves in Brazil, especially in the pre-salt play. I mentioned already, but in the pre-salt we have only 82 wells producing an average of 30,000 barrels a day, and we expect to have potential for billions of barrels of new reserves. The pre-salt we call in Brazil is a region. It's a legal polygon that was defined in a law in 2010 that established that this is in the left here in the map. You see in blue the lines showing the limits of that region. And inside this polygon, we are obliged to apply legally the production sharing contracts. And the rest of the country use the conventional concession contracts. And we have on the conventional offshore play, we drill only 6,000 wells. Only 4% of our acreage is contracted, so we have plenty of space to understand better the geological potential, especially in the Equatorial Margin. And we have seen some developments, very positive developments. Exxon has Liza discovery in Guyana, very close to the Brazilian border. We believe that we have potential for this type of discoveries as well. We see this type of plays there. Total, Exxon, BP, other companies, they are looking at the Brazilian offshore in order to discover new reserves. And the onshore is very mature. Exploration has been performed since the 1940s. We have 23,000 wells, and only 3% of our acreage is contracted. So we are the agency, we are working on measures to expedite the exploration of these three different plays in order to understand before the end of the oil era ends our prospectivity. So we do not have in Brazil really an oil industry. We have been living with a monopoly, Petrobras monopoly, since the 50s. When Petrobras was founded in 53, it started operating in 54. Brazil was a rural country. Only 36% of the population lived in the cities, 36%. And the economy was based in the agriculture and livestock. So our industry was not well developed. So during this more than 60 years that the country became a modern society and more developed economy, Petrobras was always there as the oil and gas industry, with a few exceptions, especially after 97 when the monopoly was extinguished and the agency was created. But as a result of this monopoly, we do not have an oil and gas industry in Brazil, and that's something that we want to create. And we want to create by attracting the right player for every different type of environment. When you look at the pre-salt, so very huge volumes, very high productivity, very deep reservoirs, very distant, long distance from the coastline. We need technology, we need research. It takes a long time to produce a field in the pre-salt, 6, 7, 8 years from the moment you sign the contract to the moment you have the production. So we need the super majors or major operators to be in this play. It's not the right place for a small company. Then we have the conventional offshore, that we also have the major operators, but also the exploration specialists and the mature field players. It's a different type of company we want to attract to this, to develop this play. And then we have the onshore, with those 20,000 wells producing 100,000 barrels a day, 120,000 barrels a day. We need small, mid-sized companies. We need mature field players. We need to create this secondary markets for oil fields and oil reserves in order to change the property of a field according to the moment of the life of the field. You see this in the U.S., in the Gulf of Mexico, in the North Sea. You want to see this in Brazil. I have a quote for a company called Strategy. He said, the model of a single integrated company discovering, developing an oil and gas field and operating it until it's depleted is being replaced, and I say worldwide. And this is illustrated by the emergence of exploration specialists and mature field production players. That's exactly what we want to have in Brazil. We want Petrobras, as they are saying, we do not interfere in Petrobras plans, they are independent. They are saying that we want to focus in the pre-salt and the large offshore fields. That's very positive for them and very positive for Brazil, because Petrobras concentrates in what they have expertise, they can do best, and then we can create all this new environment for small and mid-sized companies, and with an adequate oil field service companies sector in order to make our industry much more dynamic. There's another detail aspect of the oil industry is that with the shale developments in the U.S. and with the maturity of the offshore fields in the Gulf of Mexico, in the North Sea, we are seeing more and more the financial industry integrating with the oil and gas industry. The industry is no longer only a risk business, but when we talk about shale and we talk about mature fields, we are talking about places in which you have cash flow, the mature fields, or in which you have access to cash flow in a very short period of time, less the shale plays. So that facilitates the financial community to integrate with the oil and gas industry. So we are seeing worldwide that the oil and gas business, except for the big plays like the pre-salt, are more and more integrated with the financial business. And that's something that we want to do in Brazil as well. So in our regulation, we are changing series of things in order to facilitate, especially for the small and mid-sized companies, the integration with the financial environment. So talking about our environments, the pre-salt was the home of the largest offshore oil discovered in the last decade. I borrowed some remarks from Wood Mackenzie, a very known consulting firm. They said that the 63% of the world deepwater oil discoveries and 36% of all oil discoveries in the world during 2010 and 2014 were in the pre-salt region. And we had only one offer in 10 years' time when we made the bid, the first pre-salt bidding round for the Libra field. And Shell is one of the partners in the Libra fields. This was just one consortium formed by Petrobras. You see in green in this slide the discoveries in the pre-salt region. By far, the largest discoveries worldwide. And we believe that with this next bidding round that we are going to have, the ones we had already and the ones we have already programmed, we'll see several giant discoveries in the years to come. And the pre-salt will become again the home of the largest offshore discoveries worldwide. We must accelerate the production in the pre-salt. I like to show that because it is a question of the missed opportunities, as you mentioned. And the pre-salt discovery was in 2006. It was announced between 2006 and 2007. The industry knew that we had the potential to discover very large oil reserves below the pre-salt layer, the salt layer, but we were not sure about that. And eventually we were. And in 2007, the government decided to exclude 41 blocks from the 9th bidding round. There is the map. That color, like I would say, which color is that? A kind of light pink, I don't know. It's those blocks that were excluded in that bidding round. And it was a one generation lost opportunity in Brazil. We made some calculations. We lost 4.3 million barrels of production by 2018 if we had continued the bidding rounds. We lost 600 billion reais in investments. We should have installed 30 new production platforms, and we lost more than 500 billion reais in government revenues. So that's basically our plan for the future, to resume this exploration and production works, so we can install. We believe that we have potential to install between 30 and 40 new platforms in Brazil until 2027.
The 4.3, that would be just in the pre-salt or
Just the result of this.
those fields?
Then you have to add the production we had, plus decline. It's not a forecast of production, Brazilian production.
Yeah.
It's just the volume of production from those 30 platforms by 2018.
Right.
So the missed opportunity.
The missed opportunity. Yeah. Some of this is already into production because the Lula fields, but that's the number. It's huge. The production today is 2.6 million barrels a day, and we are talking about 4.3 addition. We have some estimates for our production. I'll show later on, but we estimate that if we continue with the bidding rounds and results, they correspond to what we expect. We believe that Brazilian production will be around 5 to 6 million barrels a day by 2027. That's it. That's the curve. Anticipate myself. We are in this. It's not very clear, this light, because the color is a little bit light. But if we see oil production in Brazil is around 2.6 million barrels a day by 2017. Can you see there? There's a pointer here. I couldn't.
Is there a pointer here? Is there a pointer?
There should be.
Yeah, but it wasn't. No, it was not. Oh, okay, but you can see there 2.6. We believe that with the contracts that we have already signed and the contracts that will be signed after the bidding rounds, production can go to around 5.5 million barrels a day by 2027.
If I may, what
Please.
are the assumptions in oil prices that that the model assumes?
With the same range of pricing that the market is assuming. I don't want to enter into in this type of detail, but it's nothing different from what we see in everybody else projections. So we have this 2.3 million with just a few wells producing in the pre-salt. We believe we have potential for several other discoveries. And in the pre-salt space for more than 30 new production platforms up to 2027. And I was very happy to see the other day a report for Restart Energy and Norway from Norway saying that Brazil is, in the next 4 years shall be the largest offshore market in the world for the service and exploration companies. We have, I was just mentioning what we have in this conventional offshore basins in Brazil, from Pelotas in the very south to Foz do Amazonas in the very north. And our goal is to increase exploration in these regions, to develop what we can and to understand what is our potential. We have a very limited number of contracts in this region, which is the most explored region in Brazil. So, and we have opportunity to develop additional works in the mature fields in the Campos Basin, which is producing since the 70s. So in the Campos Basin, we have a recovery factor of 24%. I mean, for every 100 barrels that we have of oil in the reservoir, we extract only 24% in the Campos Basin. Worldwide, the average is 35. So we want to facilitate the transfer of old fields for companies specialized in mature fields, so we can recover more of the oil that we still have in the reservoir. It's already discovered, no risk. So it's another of our priorities.
Enhanced oil recovery is going to be a big focus.
Yes, yes, yes. We believe that we can easily increase the recovery factor in the Campos Basin from 24 to 30%. That's enormous impact. If we do that, we will need, for every 1% that we increase recovery factor in mature fields, we need $18 billion investment. And we produce $11 billion royalties for the Brazilian society. So it's very, very relevant. It's not huge like the pre-salt, but it's immediate because the infrastructure is already there, the platforms, the pipelines. So if this happens, we will see an impact in activity very soon. And we are working with Petrobras in order to expedite that, especially the divestments that they have in the mature fields. They are selling 136 mature fields, onshore and offshore. In onshore, we had a decline in the last few years, from 2012, 2010, 2017. 30% decline in production, 30% decline in our reserves, 80% decline in number of wells, development and exploratory wells. So our goal is to expedite the transfer of those mature assets to small and mid-sized companies, and so we can revitalize activities in the very short term. Our dream is to have that happening by 2018, so we can have some resumption of the investments by the second semester of the next year.
Is the decline you've seen there roughly standard by worldwide measures of decline in similar fields?
I would say so, but it depends on every field characteristic. So, but it's normal. But we see that with the investments we can compensate part of the decline.
Did you show before the Campos recovery factor? Did you show the Santos recovery factor? Did I miss that?
No, because Santos Basin is production is not very huge, except for the pre-salt. And the pre-salt, we are in the very first years of exploration, so it's not accurate to talk about the recovery factor in a in a new producing basin. But we have the numbers for the old basins there, Potiguar, Reconquista. It's around 20 to 30%. even lower in some of those bases. It is not for the big guys, but it's very interesting for the mid-sized companies. It's a huge potential for oil recovery. And we have the new frontier basins in Brazil. We have 2 basins in which entire basins, I used to call them virgin basins because we have never drilled a single well in these basins. Never drilled a single well. So what's the potential? I don't know. No one knows. And one is offshore, Pernambuco, Paraíba offshore. The other one is onshore, Madre de Dios, the border with Bolivia. We must understand our potential. Most of our basins, they are gas-prone, onshore basins, the remaining potential. And I was talking to some of you previously here before we start the presentation, that you also have a very large potential for the unconventional. And you want to tap this potential. Especially in the Paraná Basin, I have seen some numbers, 200 TCF of potential resource in the Paraná Basin, unconventional, close to the developing markets in Brazil. So we can easily start executing projects like gas to wire. So it's one of our targets for next year to start testing the unconventional plays in Brazil. What we have done in terms of measures to stimulate exploration activities is old news. Petrobras is no longer obliged to be the only operator in the pre-salt play. This was very positive to attract other companies, some of them represented in this room. We now have a bidding rounds calendar. This is news. This is new. We will have open acreage in Brazil. So starting 2018, we want to have in permanent offer all the blocks that we have already offered in the past, and they were not contracted, or they were relinquished, and we have in our stock. So, as for 2018, the companies can study the Brazilian available blocks on a permanent basis, and when they see something that they are interested in, they can come to us and say, look, we are interested in this specific block, and then we will manage to make a specific auction for that block. Not like a big event bidding round, but as a permanent way of contracting exploration here in Brazil. This is very positive for the onshore, the mature fields, basins, and small and mid-sized companies. And we have already extended the exploratory periods for the blocks contracted in bid 11, bid 12, because we faced a series of difficulties in order to continue the exploration activities in those blocks, licensed early in this decade. What we want to do in the future and to revitalize the mature fields in the short term, well, Petrobras to speed up, I have mentioned this already, the divestment plan. We are working on ways to authorize reserve-based lending so the companies can use the reserve as a guarantee with the banks. We are discussing the potential royalty reduction for additional production resulting from new investments in mature fields. And we want to extend the production contracts in those mature fields. Some of them, they start expiring in 2025. In the oil industry, 5-10 years is a very short period of time for investment. So you want companies to be comfortable that if they invest, they will have an extension in their contracts. Some contracts are on the offshore basins. We have some other very important measures to unlock investments in the short term. It's very famous, the expression transfer of rights. Petrobras in 2010 acquired the right to explore and produce 5 billion barrels in a series of fields in the pre-salt region. Eventually, we discovered that there is a surplus volume in this region. And recently, a few weeks ago, we have announced that in our point of view, we have 6 to 15 billion barrels additional there in that region. These are reserves. There is no need for exploration. So the government is renegotiating with Petrobras the terms for the exploration and production of this 5 billion that they have the right to do, and eventually the government can lease or bid this extra volumes if they decide so. If we do that, we will attract the investments immediately. We are discussing, someone mentioned here about local content. We are discussing local content regulation. It's very important for us to unlock investments for every production platform that we have in the offshore region in Brazil. For every year we delay the production, the society loses almost 3 billion reais in government revenues, 2.6 to be exact. So it's our goal to expedite this process. And we are working to improve the regulatory framework, adapting then, as I have mentioned, to every one of our exploration environments. So if we succeed in doing that, what we see as a potential for new investments in Brazil is we believe we will have almost 40 new platforms producing by 2030 to be contracted by 2027, with attracting almost 850 billion reais in investment, 350 to be contracted in Brazil with Brazilian suppliers and service companies. And as a result of that, we imagine by 2030 these new fields we will add 100 billion reais as government revenues on an early basis. And we are discussing now the financial crisis in the federal government, and the deficit is supposed to be 159 billion reais in the early basis. So we are talking about revenues almost in the range of the fiscal deficit in Brazil. This is very relevant. And if we succeed in investing in the mature fields, and for this I repeat, it's very important that Petrobras divest the mature fields, so we have new players investing in those regions. For every 1%, I mentioned already, for every 1% that we add in the recovery factor, we add as well 2.2 billion barrels to our reserves, and we need $18 billion investments, and we create $11 billion in royalties. So if you combine the new production in the offshore field and the pre-salt with the mature fields, we are talking about investments and revenues that are very relevant for the Brazilian economy. I don't see any other sector that can produce this type of impact in our economy. And the next bidding rounds, how we are in terms of time? Good? Okay. We have a bidding round calendar. It's a long discussion about that. It is very important to attract the companies, to make the companies start studying our geology and to get in love with our opportunities. So we established a calendar. We started in 2017. We have already performed 4 bidding rounds. We have the 15 bidding rounds concession scheduled for March, 29th of March. Then we have the next pre-salt bidding round, the 4th one, for June the 7th. Then we have the open acreage starting up in 2018. So we don't need the bidding round for companies to look for new opportunities in the mature basins in Brazil. We will keep the auctions only for the more prolific regions, the pre-salt and the more attractive offshore and onshore opportunities. And we are working on the sectors to be announced that will be offered in 2020 and 2021. So our goal is to have a rolling 5 years bidding round calendar in which we anticipate which areas will be offered. When we combine the bidding round calendar with the open acreage, we will have a system that we have never had in Brazil, opening up space for investments in a way that we have never had in the country. Some remarks on this year's bidding round. We performed in May the 4th marginal field bidding round, very small accumulations, old fields that Petrobras has relinquished. We were surprised by the results. 2,000% spread in the signing bonus, but not relevant in terms of volume, but in terms of analyzing the interest of the small companies. Then we had the 14th bidding round with a very strong presence of Petrobras, Exxon, and other companies, when we had the best ever signing bonus. But most important was that we attracted companies to explore in every one of our basins except for Pelotas Basin in the very south, which is a very frontier basin in Brazil yet. And we had the pre-salt bidding round. We attracted some of the largest companies in the world for the offer. We succeed in 6 out of 7 blocks in the pre-salt to be auctioned. One of the blocks we offered was not located in the pre-salt region. And we are very surprised with the offer we got in profit oil share. I don't know if you are familiar with the results in these production sharing contracts. The signing bonus is fixed, and the winner is the company that offers the highest profit oil share for the government. In the production sharing contract, we have the cost recovery, we call in the industry cost oil, and then we have the profit oil, which is the profit that we had after recovering the costs. And then this profit oil is shared with the government. And we had there the numbers that we established as minimum for each one of the blocks. And there was a case in which we established a minimum of 10%, and then we had an offer of 80%. And that was kind of similar in several blocks. We made an estimate before the bidding round that during the lifespan of the contracts, the government revenues as a result of these bidding rounds, of course, this is a statistic guess, but based on our exploratory risks and the parameters we use to establish the signing bonus and all the other economic parameters, we expected to get 400 billion reais as government revenues. And then we recalculate, and the number was 600 billion reais, 50% more in government revenues during the lifespan of the contract. That was very, very surprising. And some people said, "Oh, the bidding round was not was not a success because they did not sell all the blocks, and then they got short of 1 billion reais in signing bonus." But they didn't calculate 200 billion reais as government revenues as a difference. And we deal with, when you deal with the public, there is some kind of imagination. So the people think that you're going to make an auction and you offer 200 exploratory blocks, and then you're going to sell 200 exploratory blocks, and you offer 8 blocks and you're going to sell 8 blocks. So it's not like that. When you have 75% of success, it's a success, no matter what type of parameter you use to measure that. Then what is next for 2018 and coming to an end? We have this 15 bidding round. So auction day will be March 29, and deadline for enrollment in the beginning of February. And we are offering areas in 70 blocks in 8 basins, onshore and frontier areas and offshore. Those are the blocks that we are offering. Some of the blocks are in the Brazilian equatorial margin. We estimate 12 billion barrels of oil in place in the blocks we are offering. We are offering some blocks in Sergipe Alagoas, is a new frontier in deep water. Petrobras has some discoveries. We had Queiroz Galvão with the blocks there. They partnered with Exxon, and Exxon and Queiroz Galvão they acquired some blocks in the 14th bidding rounds, and we are offering new acreage in the region. We are also offering, again, acreage close to the pre-salt in the Campos and Santos Basin. and we expect that those blocks will attract a lot of interest because they are in the vicinity of blocks that we are offering inside the pre-salt polygon in the 4th pre-salt bidding round in June. Will occur in June the 7th, and those are the we estimate that in these 5 blocks that we'll be offering in the next pre-salt bidding round, they will have 17 billion barrels of unrisked oil in place volume. That's huge. Remember that the Brazilian reserves are 13 billion barrels nowadays. Now we have to, according to the legislation, have to wait on Petrobras to declare if they want to use their priority right in each one of those or more of those blocks. Then we'll being open the envelopes in June. Aliás, jacta est. Then we have the open acreage, as I mentioned. We want to announce as soon as possible which will be the blocks that will be offered under this new regime. This is completely new in Brazil. So, without the need of an auction, a bidding round, these blocks will be permanently available for the industry to select and to acquire whenever they deem convenient. And just to conclude, and I was mentioning in the starting when I started the discussion that all along this more than 60 years that Petrobras was real or virtual monopoly in Brazil, we had only 2 moments of opening. During the 70s, during the Geisel government, the military rule, we have the risk contracts. We authorized the foreign companies to go there and explore in Brazil. No relevant results, just one field discovered in the Campos Basin, Merluza, by Shell, a gas field. Some of the acreage that's now in the pre-salt region was contracted by the majors, and at that time they didn't find the deep reservoirs, and they relinquished the area. They returned it to the government. Then we have in '97 the end of the monopoly and Petrobras monopoly, and then the creation of ANP, the bidding rounds, very successful movement. But in 2010. We had a new pre-salt law. Petrobras was the sole operator. Then we have all these discussions. We faced enormous crisis in the oil and gas industry. We stayed 5 years without offering new acreage for the companies. The oil price went south. Petrobras faced this enormous financial crisis. And eventually, the crisis in the oil and gas industry in Brazil was much deeper than the crisis in the economy, the Brazilian economy itself. We have experienced a very sharp decline. I didn't bring here because too much information, but we faced a very strong decline in activity. We used to drill 230, 240 exploratory wells per year. We are drilling less than 20 this year. As a result, we had almost 200 oil discoveries in Brazil in 2012. We can count in a few fingers the number of discoveries that we have in Brazil in 2017. So if you do not change the pace, we contract the end of the oil and gas production in Brazil. So that's why we are in this new environment with these new government policies. With Petrobras also repositioned. So for the first time, we are seeing a very different environment in oil and gas exploration in Brazil. Not only the bidding rounds, but also Petrobras offering mature fields for the market. And when we combine what is going on in Petrobras upstream with the opening in the natural gas market, with the downstream special refining business, Petrobras is discussing with several companies partnerships in the refining business. We are, for the first time, in the direction of having in Brazil a diverse and competitive market, not only in the upstream, but also in the natural gas business and the refining business. This will require a renovated service sector, supply chain sector. And I like to say that this is the greatest transformation in the Brazilian oil and gas business ever. And we are completing now the opening that was started in '97 when the Petrobras monopoly was formally extinguished and the agency was created. And I believe by 2020 we will see a completely different business, oil and gas business in Brazil. And the companies that position themselves now, I believe they will be the winners from 2020 onwards. Well, that was everything I had for you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share these thoughts with you, and I'm at your disposal for comments.
Did you say that Petrobras is pursuing increasing refining capacity in partnership with others?
Well, Petrobras, as part of their divestment plan, they are selling assets in the natural gas business. They said they won't invest anymore in pipelines, treatment facilities, and distribution companies. And they sold some of those assets already. So we are seeing for the first time a real opening in the natural gas business in Brazil, which is irrelevant for the size of the economy. And we are seeing now Petrobras has a new pricing policy attached to international price. They have some refining projects that they stopped. They need financing, and they are discussing with companies to resume these projects. And they are saying that they want to offer part of the refining business for divestment, and they're going to announce the way that they do that by the end of this year. I don't know which is the format they want to select, but it's news on the papers that Petrobras is trying to attract new companies to invest in refining in Brazil as well. When you compare the supply in 2016, most of the diesel oil imports, for instance, into Brazil were performed by other companies than Petrobras. 60%, 70% of diesel oil imported in Brazil in 2016 were imported for other players. So we are in the beginning of open market for our derivatives in Brazil.
Hi, Gugar Vargas Media. When should we expect a change in how the state share of pre-salt crude is being marketed?
Well, there is a discussion these days on how PPSA, which is the company that is responsible for the government share in the profit oil, is gonna deal with that. So every day we see some different news in the papers in Brazil that's a kind of executive order or any type of measure is going to be performed to facilitate this process. This is an ongoing discussion.
Yes.
Décio, when you look at, long term, you referred to BP's outlook. We do one, the IEA does one, the EIA and the U.S. government does one, WoodMac and so forth. How do you and the government sort of forecast? Because you've got this huge asset, you need to value what its long-term valuation is.
Well, we have our own forecast. This is the one I showed you. It's what I have seen is pretty much in line with the forecast I have seen from Wood Mackenzie. It's in the same range of production, in the same range of timing. In our point of view, we believe that the pre-salt can be responsible for maybe the larger portion of new production outside the non-OPEC production, new non-OPEC production up to 2027.
Congratulations on this transformation. Every time I look at this, every 6 months or so, and look at all the progress that you've made, it really is quite it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I hope to be here again in July, maybe to make an update.
I'm just curious.
If the results are good, if not, I stay in Brazil.
I was here for the paper financial thing too, and obviously they have their plan. They had last quarter wasn't so good for them. It's a bumpy road. I know there's a lot of work they have to do. They're a big part of this with the other sectors, not just
Yeah.
and everything else as well. How do you see that? I guess the question is, how do you see that ending up to the point where you are satisfied, or in your own personal view, that gotten to a place where you can honestly say that this whole thing is taken, it's gonna work, and it's irreversible?
Well, satisfied I will never be. There's always be room for improvement. But I like to say that I think that what we're going to do, what we have done already, is irreversible, because the number of contracts that we have already in place, especially these new contracts, after the 14 bid round, the second and third pre-salt bidding rounds, we will find large volumes of oil to develop, billions of barrels. And if we add to that the transfer of rights, not only the 5 billion barrels that Petrobras has the right to develop, but also the additional volumes, I think that we have already marketed a volume that if we risk with exploratory risk, we have billions of barrels to develop in Brazil. Of course, it's important to keep the pace. Of course, it's important to continue with the bidding rounds. But I think that what we have done already is enough for us to contract a new cycle of investments in the oil and gas industry in Brazil that will go beyond 2020.
Still like for the consultant, spent about 30 years in the oil and gas industry, so I was, in fact, with the company that did a pre-salt round in '97. So the question I have for you is this. I was listening to Chairman Petrobras yesterday on Squawk Box. He was there. And he was talking about the very low cost of lifting costs on their pre-salt investments and how that has gives him optimism for their pre-salt investments. And I'm just wondering, what is your perspective on sort of the, I mean, this is always the question inside a company, and former colleagues from the companies here, the relative oil price versus the lifting costs. I mean, that's what you've got to judge your investment. So I'm just wondering, what is your perspective on the progress going forward on lifting costs out of the pre-salt region?
Well, it's amazing, the productivity. I remember that a few years ago, you used to say that the pre-salt break-even was around $45 a barrel overall. And the industry started cutting costs, getting more efficient. And now Petrobras, I saw in last May, OTC in Houston, Petrobras presentation on the Libra project, in which they said that their goal was to get 35 barrels as break-even. At that time, probably the lifting cost was around $8 per barrel. And now they say they are below. And last time I heard of that, it's below that. But what I see is similar to what I heard in the last World Petroleum Congress in July. I was in a panel with the CEO of Total, and they are also a partner in the Libra project. And he told publicly, and then we discussed a little bit. He told that they believe that they can get the pre-salt break-even cost to below $20 a barrel. So that's very competitive, and because the reserves are huge and the productivity is very impressive. So that's the lowest number I have ever heard, less than $20 a barrel at the break-even. And I believe that it's possible. The industry is very good when they want to, and they start cutting costs and getting more competitive. And there is this enormous space for increasing productivity in the pre-salt works. And if you have several operators simultaneously, this process is much efficient and it's quicker.
Any more questions? If not, I would like Décio to obviously thank you very much for having given us this very important information lecture. I just wanted to highlight something here that is important, especially because I didn't remember, this is 1 year after Pedro Parente came for his first presentation as president of Petrobras. So to show what's going on in Brazil, that it is possible to work on a major project professionally, with transparency, and with honesty. It's happening. So I wanted to thank you very much for sharing this with us. Thank you to all of you that came here to listen to Décio. With your permission, we are going to PDF your presentation and share it on our website. Thank you, Ambassador Anya, and our interns. And so we will continue to do this, trying to highlight the positive while reporting on ongoing efforts on the rule of law, environment, and other science, technology, etc. Thank you very much. Good day.
Thank you.